Hi, my name is Eileen McGee, and I was president of the Irish American Home for the year 2006. I first became involved with the Irish American Home because I had moved to Hartford, and when I was growing up in New York, my parents belonged to the Irish Society of Nassau, Suffolk, and Queens, and in Mineola. And it was similar to this, except on a bigger scale, except there was no land. There was no, fields next to it or anything. But when I heard of the Irish American Home, I came over here. And I can actually remember pretty distinctly my first time at the Irish American Home, because it was an immediate sense of familiarity, a sense of home. When you looked around, they looked like my father, the men looked like my father, the women looked like my mother, they looked like my sister, they looked like my brothers, they looked like my aunts and uncles and my cousins, and you just felt a sense of home, and the people were so friendly. I find that's one of the biggest attributes that the Irish American Home has, is its people. I always say in many a meeting that the club is its members, and the members are the club. And it's so true. The original founding members of this society used the word home for a reason, because they came here, some without any family here, some with some family here that they might not have ever met because they left home before they were born. Ireland was exporting their best people. My husband, Miles left Ireland at 16 and went to England to serve an apprenticeship. So he left Ireland, I think, in 1959. The year before I was born. He came here to the States in 1965, and he came out to his sister, and then his brother followed. He still had two brothers and a sister in Ireland, and a brother in England, and another brother in Australia. And Miles will tell you how they were all over the world. His sister, Joan, was a nurse in Africa. His brother, Frank, was a mercenary soldier in Arabia. It's an amazing story that the Irish have. And I think it's a sad story, but it's a happy story too, because they kind of emphasize the good, I think, at least my version of it, like, you remember the good things, because everybody has the bad things. I started coming down to the Irish American Home because it was back in the mid-'80s, and I was very interested in the political scene at the time. Growing up in New York, and my father was a policeman in the city, and he was very supportive of the Patriot movement, and I got involved with the IIRM with Jimmy Larkin. That was the Irish Immigration Reform Movement, and it was back when JFK had kind of sabotaged the Irish here in the States by changing the quotas so that Ireland wouldn't lose so many of the best and the brightest, was, I guess, the plan for it. But what it did was it made a lot of the Irish become illegals when they got here, because there was no quota, there was no room for them. And so Bruce Morrison, Jimmy Larkin worked with Bruce Morrison with the IIRM to get the Morrison visas, so that the Irish, the young Irish, the ones that were coming out educated, they're some of the best educated people in the world, actually, that came here from Ireland. And also at that time, it was the 80s into the 90s. I mean, we're coming now upon the 25th anniversary of the Good Friday Agreement, and I remember when that was signed. I joined Irish Northern Aid Hartford Unit, and back then, in addition to Richie Lawler and Tommy McBride, who have kept up the mantle all these years, we had people like Andy and Maureen Fernandez, who dedicated their lives to the cause of Irish freedom, and Ray and Nikki Green, Malachi and Maureen McDonald, Big Dan Nolan. There was quite a few very smart people who knew the history of Ireland and were willing to give it to others. And I could sit and listen to some of these stories that they would tell. And then I got to make my own stories. Jerry Adams in, I think it was 1994 or 95, got the 24-hour visa and was in New York. And we drove down, we hopped in a car with Barney McLoyne, went down. We went down, Barney and Dinah McLoyne. We went down to New York and we saw Jerry Adams in that 24-hour period. And I've seen Jerry Adams several times since. He was invited here. In fact, he spoke at a function in Hartford for Irish Northern Aid. I've seen him in Ireland. We also used to have speakers come out. And sometimes it was people who you wonder how they got in the country and the stories they told. It was amazing because they were on the front lines. I had Joe Cahill, who is like an iconic Irish patriot of that time, and I had him at my house with his wife. I actually put him up at the Goodwin Hotel. I was working at City Place, and I put him up at the Goodwin Hotel, and he was just amazed. History at that time was still living, and people were very involved, very much interested, and that's what the Irish American Home gave me. And so I think I started initially just feeling comfortable down here, and young. I was in my 20s, and so the idea of this movement that was going on in the Troubles in Ireland, and if I could be of any help, and the helping with the IRM, with the visas, there was just such an amazing bunch of people. The young Irish that were out here at that time were very involved with that movement because it was them that needed it. And so it was neat meeting people your own age from Ireland that were here. But the other part of down here too was you got to meet the elder statesmen, like Dan Nolan. The amount of history Dan had in his head and the amount of connections it's amazing. But it was a lot of them, because Andy Fernandez, who I don't even believe was Irish, Maureen was from the north of Ireland, his wife, but I don't believe Andy was even Irish, but he did more for the cause of Ireland than almost anybody at that time here at the Irish Club. And so also what I met down here were people who were so willing to volunteer. I mean, every function, this place is run by volunteers. There's only one paid position, one full-time paid position, and that's the permittee. And then you had part-time bartenders, and everything else that got done here was volunteer people. And it was such a fun way to meet people. I always tell people that volunteer for a function, and then you'll meet people and you'll get the feel for it. So at the Irish American Home, I think the first position I volunteered for was treasurer. And then I was vice president under Richie Crist. And then following Richie, I was president. And then I became a director and was on the board of directors. Then I was elected chairman of the board. I've also been permittee and, well, bartender first, and then permittee. And now, even today, so that spanned a lot of years, and I couldn't tell you which years I did what, except I have written down that presidency was 2006. To think about what my legacy or what did I achieve, I can't split back my memories into what was when and when I was actually president, because time just has a way of filling in and moving by. But I do remember some things work. Sometimes you do things and it works and it's like brilliant. Other times you do things and you've made the biggest mistake ever. And not that it can't be changed and tweaked and made to work in a better way. Actually, one thing that comes to mind, I'm not sure if Richie was president and I was vice president, or if he was on the board and I was president, but we decided to hold, I think we had a New Year's Eve party that was a disaster. We didn't get the people out. It was an empty hall. It didn't make the money it needed to make. It cost, it was a failure. And so we were thinking, well, people just aren't doing that anymore. It's amateur night out. Nobody's going for a big dance and getting dressed up anymore. They're staying home and drinking, there, or going to house parties. So we decided, and I'm pretty sure it was Richie's idea, to hold a family-friendly New Year's Eve. And we would have it start. We would ring in the new year at 7 o'clock when it hit Ireland. And it was so much fun getting ready for that. I can remember we filled the hall upstairs with balloons. That was one of my big things. I love balloons. And the room was filled with balloons and just so cheery, and we had the tablecloths out, and I had the brilliant idea, because I had bought or ordered the hats and the noisemakers and the blowers. And so I had the bright idea of setting all the tables out with all their paraphernalia. So the room is empty except for the balloons. We're taking pictures. The tables look gorgeous with all the fun little things on it to make noise. And then the families come in. And the first kid to walk in that room picked up a whistle or a banger, and they made noise the whole rest of the night. So it was note to self, next year, those noisemakers and hats get held off until maybe 6:45, not at 5 o'clock, where you had the noise going constantly. But that was something we learned from. And it did become, as I said, first it started as an Irish American home way of how do we fix New Year's Eve? We didn't get the people to come out. And so we always have a way of looking outside the box for things, and we did. And that was the Irish American Homes fundraiser event. And as the years went by, it was such a success. The GAA, which was very family-oriented. These young guys, and now girls, had kids and they would come out, so they took the banner for putting that on and giving that opportunity to families. And it's a beautiful thing. Another thing that I find very important here at the Irish American Home, that the Irish American Home has to offer people, it's the generations. I mean, and I like to point out, sometimes I tell some people, I love your family. It's 3, 4 generations, and they're all down here for functions together, and it's a beautiful sight. But it's more than that, because it's not just those families that have the long lineage of membership down here. It's the fact that at every function, there's different generations of people enjoying themselves. Of all the positions I've had at the Irish American Home, and some people thought I was going backwards, but I don't believe I am. They could not fill the nominations for assistant membership secretary at our last nominating meeting. And not wanting to see the club fail, I stood up and I took the assistant membership nomination unopposed and became the new assistant membership secretary. After having been, as I said, treasurer, vice president, president, board member, chairman of the board, I'm now the assistant membership secretary. I have a great mentor in Peggy Radcliffe, who is the membership secretary. But really, I think it's almost the most work I've ever done. It's the most rewarding work in a way as well, because it's so direct. So many of the other positions, you had to watch over such a wide range of things. When you're the assistant membership secretary, you're worried and you're thinking about membership. And I've always said, this club, the club is its members and the members are the club. And now having the opportunity to see and these new members coming in, when I was on the board, I screened them and I told them all about the club. When I was president, I swore them in. But now I'm inviting them, and now I'm getting their information and kind of following up with them. And it's amazing. And just this year, we've had over 100 new members. And that was through March. The Irish American Home, one of its beauties or treasures is the fact that members get to share members' lives. I know as an officer, you have a bit more of the maybe setting things in motion, and maybe that's one of the things I enjoyed about doing events upstairs, sitting people you knew would get along, and maybe someone who didn't know anybody, you'd put them with people you knew, would chat away at them. And the warmth of the people down here is amazing. I mean, you share in their joys, you share in their sorrows. I've been to weddings, I've been to christenings, I've been to funerals and wakes. I've seen children lose their parents. I've seen parents lose their children. Husbands lose their wives, wives lose their husbands. But they come together down here to share their grief. They don't only share their grief, though, they share their joys. I think my life would have been very much different if I hadn't found the Irish American Home Society and decided to get involved and work through things with people. And after you volunteer for a while, you kind of get to the point where, well, let me see, I'll give it a try. I think I can run with this. And you have so many people to help you. We had elder statesmen like Pat Whalen, who was immensely beneficial to me. He helped me get through a lot of things down here. And he helped me to keep my heart open, my mind open, and to remember that people have their opinions, and you have your opinion, and that's the way it is, and you just have to be able to move forward. Some of my happiest times here would be, I met my husband Miles at the Irish American Home in the upstairs hall. I was selling raffle tickets at a Northern Aid dance. We got married in the upstairs hall. And I know a lot of people can say they had their wedding in the upstairs hall, but not that many can say they got married up there. I had a justice of the peace, and actually our wedding ceremony was in the upstairs hall. One of my best friends, Lil Holleran, was the bartender. Seamus Danaher was my caterer. We had, back then, show bands were the thing, and my father's family in New York had opened their doors and lived around the block from Richie O'Shea's family. And Richie O'Shea had a show band in New York, and he was the band for our wedding, and I don't think people stopped dancing the whole evening. They were dancing on the way up to the buffet line. They were dancing. It was an amazing, amazing night. I feel blessed. I absolutely feel blessed to have been given the opportunity to serve this membership in so many different capacities, and even more so, to be accepted as a member and to have met so many people over the years